Welcome to episode 205 of Sports Geek. On this week's episode, I chat with Nielsen Sports Glenn Lovett about his global career in the sports business.
Welcome to Sports Geek, the podcast built for sports digital and sports business professionals. And now, here's your host, who knows there's no off-season in sports business, Sean Callanan.
Thanks, DJ Joel. Yes, my name is Sean Callanan, and you're listening to Sports Geek. You can get me by multiple ways. One of those ways would be email, sean@sportsgeekhq.com, or via Twitter or Sports Geek Nation Slack. At Sean Callanan or at Sports Geek, you'll find me on most channels. And you might be listening to this on multiple platforms, but hopefully you listen to it at sportsgeekhq.com. Or you could be doing it, listening to it on Roku. Sports Geek is now available on Roku. So thanks for John McCauley and the Dot Studio guys for helping us look at Roku as an OTT. Looking at OTT as a platform for podcasts. I do believe that Sports Geek is one of the first podcasts to have its own dedicated Roku channel. I'm going to be interested to see how that works, how podcasts are accepted, those kind of things. So, yeah, if you've got Roku, send us a screenshot. Take a screenshot of the Sports Geek channel and let us know what you think. We're going to be testing out Dot Studio Pro just to see what it does, some of the capabilities that it offers. They've also been working with Scott Kegley, a former guest, with the Minnesota Vikings to provide them with the OTT channel. So, it'll be interesting to see where it goes. As always, if you want to work with Sports Geek, you want my help, and I love helping podcast listeners, you can simply go to sportsgeekhq.com/work, or simply just reach out, send me a tweet, send me an email. As I said, love catching up, and I've been doing that recently. I'm currently recording this intro in New York. Been on the road, which is why there's been a little bit of a break. Because it is hard to record podcasts and travel and do multiple conferences, which I've been doing at Seek Conference in Dallas and Podcast Movement in Philadelphia. But I'm going to talk a little bit about those after this chat. I was lucky enough to catch up with Glenn Lovett from Nielsen Sports, and thank you very much to Darren Birch from the AFL, who both suggested Glenn and helped us connect. If you've listened to Darren Birch as a former guest, episode 174, so, yeah, I was lucky enough to catch up with Glenn, not far from where I am here in the Financial District. Talked about his career, him being a former AFL footballer, played back in the day for the Melbourne Footy Club, and now been working in the sports business for many a year. So this is my chat with Glenn Lovett from Nielsen Sports. All right, I am here in the Financial District of New York City in the offices of Nielsen Sports. I'm here with the Managing Director of Nielsen Sports, Glenn Lovett. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, mate. Good to be here.
Thank you very much for Darren Birch from the AFL for connecting us.
Do we have to thank him?
Do we have to thank him? Is that how we're opening?
Yeah. Hey, Birchie, appreciate it, mate.
Appreciate the connect. Want to get a bit of background into your sports business story. Yep. Very similar to a couple of other guests that I've had that have come from AFL footballer background into the world of sports. Tell everyone about how you got started in the world of sports. Yeah,
so I think we were sort of fortunate to come through a period of playing footy where we were semi-pro.
Yep.
So obviously studied and then worked, not quite full-time, but pretty much full-time. There were a bunch of us that did that. So lucky enough to have actually had experience while I was working. So
this is in the 90s. You're playing footy for Melbourne Football Club.
That's right. And it was a transition period. So, I did some work for Mattel, and then was lucky enough to join Nike at a time when the brand was really hot, and got great experience in doing that. And towards the end of my career, when we started to go full-time professional, sort of Neil Baum was coach at the time, started pushing us that way. And then when Neil Danaher came over, he basically mandated that we all went full-time. So I then did an MBA at Melbourne Business School, which was sort of a perfect complement to the experience. So that when I finished, I had experience and I was set up for something else. right? So I feel very fortunate to have done that.
Yep.
And I actually wouldn't be here today if I didn't live through that era, I believe.
Do you think it would, I mean, for the guys today that are, full-time,
Yeah.
expecting to do 40, 50 hours a week at the club, do you reckon it would be tougher in that position now coming out of the system at that sort of space?
Look, I think it is, right? If you don't have relevant experience and a lot of it and you exit at 30 or later, I think your options are a little bit more limited. However, what I would say is that companies and businesses do look to athletes, particularly team athletes, because they are great team players, they are great leaders in the business. So if someone came to me who was a great athlete, who was a leader, who had actually spent time outside of their career trying to better themselves by studying, by doing a little bit of part-time work, they're all characteristics that
because they have the discipline and they understand structures of teams.
100%. 100%. So there is definitely that opportunity. And I think now also if you have a long career as well, you're more set up as well. So you can take your time to think about what you want to do. And my message to any guy playing out there at the moment is also to leverage your contacts as much as possible. And that's probably something that I didn't do enough. But, like people want to help. If you're an AFL footballer, people want to help you.
Yeah.
Leverage your network, but show that you are trying to better yourself, right? And show that you can add value. And I think there's huge opportunities out there.
Yeah, I recently chatted with Matthew Pavlich, who's just retired, just come out of that system and pretty much been in that full time since 17-year-old. He was very much did that focus on footy and then started to talk to different people and figure out his network and also find his passions outside of footy. Yeah. So you've ended up in sports business. Was that a natural occurrence? Was it just something you sort of fell into? Was it something you sought?
Yeah, look, I've always been really passionate about it. And again, I was lucky enough to join Nike at the time. Ben Buckley was marketing director and my boss, and a couple of other guys, Brent Scrimshaw, Ben Crow, who are known about town in Melbourne, were colleagues at the time as well. And it was a real growth period. And obviously being passionate about sport, I was really fortunate to have done that. And then I went and worked actually in consulting post-MBA with a company called Booz Allen, which was a great experience. I often say it's like medicine. Yep. Tasted terrible, but it was really good for me. And, even having had that experience of being a semi-pro athlete and that work experience, I still felt like I was behind. Yeah. But again, as an athlete, as a footballer, having played team sport at the highest level, you adapt. Right, you do, because you're used to facing adversity. There's no one, I walk into a meeting, right? There's people out there that have faced adversity, but there's nothing like walking over the battlefield. Yep. Right, as like playing Adelaide through a hostile crowd. Same as Fremantle, whatever. That's an experience that can really shape your leadership. All right, and that actually really adds value. And then, with Ben Crow, actually, who was a colleague at Nike, we sort of fell into a business which has now evolved into a business called Gemba, which is doing really well down there. Feel proud to have been associated with that. But I think a few years after doing that, I just felt the need to see the world. Yeah. So I had a bunch of friends in London at the time, was coming up to London 2012. So I just packed my bags and thought, I've got to give this a crack now. Yep. Mid-30s, it's now or never. Mm-hmm. And again, I think having had that footy experience just made me want to have a crack, to use an Australian term. It's like I want to get out there and see whether I've got it, and I've got nothing to lose. I can always come back. But took the risk, and here I am. So,
and you think? I mean, I should be getting a cut from Trade Victoria because I talk up Melbourne as a sports town and a sports business town all the time with all the different sports in there. Do you think that held you in good stead, even though you had very much a footy focus, but so much different sports and diversity of sports 100%. Helped you in the global view of things? Yeah, 100%. Like, people really respect Australia and Australians, right? Because we are a sporting nation. Obviously Melbourne is incredible in terms of the sport it offers, but so Sydney. Actually, in fact, every Australian town and city. But also, as Australians, we also look to the rest of the world, right? We want to travel. A lot of kids backpack at a young age, want to see the world. But also in our industry, you've been over here running workshops.
right? And you've been over there the last 7 years. The
Yeah.
people that come over and want to learn from US business, and when I was in London from the Premier League and whatever, are mostly Australians.
Yeah.
Right? Because we feel a little bit isolated being so far away. We want to learn. We want to get better. We want to succeed on the world stage. And we're open to new ideas.
Yeah.
Whereas I would say Americans, and I'm generalizing here,
Yep.
Americans and Europeans in particular look less at other markets.
Yep.
They're increasingly doing that now because it's a more global marketplace. But I think as Australians, we lead the way in terms of wanting to learn and get better. And we're world leaders in many aspects of the sports industry.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I've found in my sort of travels from the US point of view is that they do a lot of learning internally from internal leagues point of view.
Yep.
And very collegial in that space. Whether it's going to conferences like SEAT and they're all sharing, or operations like Team Bow at NBA where
Yep.
all the teams are sharing best practice. But yeah, I do talk to a lot of people and say, it's like weekly that they're having someone from Australia or New Zealand
Totally.
come out and sort of see how they're doing things differently.
Yeah, and I think also like it's incredibly competitive in Australia. So you think about Melbourne and Sydney marketplace and all the teams and franchises and sports who are competing for the same fans.
Yep.
Whereas if you think about it from a US market, you've got DMAs, what they call them, right?
Yep.
So we're areas where you have access as the New York Yankees, exclusive access to that area. You don't compete there with other franchises. And Melbourne and Sydney are the most competitive sports markets in the world. And again, that shapes us. And I've heard that sort of analogy with the film industry in the past, how being so competitive, having smaller budgets, needing to make good with not much actually makes you be more innovative and think creatively. Right? That's definitely the case in the sports industry.
Yeah, it's definitely the case in the sport, but also in Melbourne. Like I think it's been interesting to see the membership type philosophy and the ecosystem sort of starting to come to the US, even if it's a language thing, like the Kansas City Chiefs starting to call their season ticket holders members to play on that identity play that, as people from Melbourne, we know. I talk about Melbourne's and Birchie's done a great job and the AFL's done a great job and it's at guilt level marketing. You meet someone who says they're a Melbourne supporter and you're like, are you a member yet?
Yeah.
Right,
Totally.
And it's just sort of evolved in that way. I think the MLS are doing a lot in that space, sort of to connect the fans from a membership point of view. So now, in your role at Nielsen Sports, what things are you looking over and overseeing in the Nielsen Sports role?
Yeah, so we're obviously part of the Nielsen company, which is a big media measurement company. We're in over 20 markets all over the world. Work for the biggest rights holders sports in the world, so all the major leagues and teams here. We have over 100 team clients. Work for the Premier League, La Liga. We work for Six Nations, so you name it. Got a really good business in Australia with the AFL as a major client, Tennis Australia, etc. So we just basically help clients understand the commercial value of their assets, right, and how to engage with fans. Pretty much. We work both on the rights holder side and on the brand side. And
so, the question I'm getting a lot is, how do we value whether it's this Instagram post or these assets and that piece? Because the market's pretty settled in the what do we charge for that sign? What we're now seeing the jersey sponsorships and stuff coming into Australia that's happened in Europe and that. But the digital piece has always been we're not quite sure, and the whole, we'll just throw it in. It's like really hard to double zero. So that whole experience, how is that, how is the, I guess, the valuation and the explanation to brand sponsors on this is what this piece is? How's that evolved over the past years?
Just a little bit of history before I start. So Nielsen Sports actually acquired Repicom, which was an Australian company and success story set up by Paul Smith and Danny Townsend 10 plus years ago out of Sydney, and they set out to actually be the best logo counters in the world. So, which is essentially valuing sponsorship. So any patch on a jersey or Guernsey, any LED board, and they did that by comparing it to the value of a 30-second TV, right? So what's the CPM? How many? What's your audience? And come up with a calculation which would help advertisers compare that. And it's the same philosophy now in digital and social. Now, obviously, it's a massive trend, disrupting the industry hugely. We're helping all our clients try to understand Firstly, what assets they have.
Yep.
So we call them digital fan stories.
Yep.
So how do you create stories around all your content so you can actually connect with a brand in a relevant way across that content? But also, what's the value of that across platforms? So how do people engage with it?
And it's trying to help put it in terms that the brands could understand, because they're in the media buying space. They can easily buy a radio spot, and they can easily buy a TV spot, and they're like, we understand that.
Yep.
It is evolving, or it's changing,
That's
or
exactly
it's different. But it's like, we want to explain it in those terms, not his 6 posts.
Yeah, exactly. And the beauty of digital and social is that you can actually measure engagement as well. So, through likes and shares and comments and all sorts of different things as well. So, and, leagues and teams are spending a lot more time, effort, money, resources in trying to engage their fans through digital and social. And they're working with the Facebooks, the Instagrams, the Twitters, the Snapchats. They're real partners, right? Because they can really add value and grow their businesses. And
as that's moving, like those social, what were social media are becoming more, they're morphing into media companies in their own right. They're morphing into broadcasts. As especially as rights are starting to be carved off.
Correct.
Facebook's putting its hand up for trying to figure out what Facebook Watch is.
Yep.
A lot of sports rights holders are sort of keeping Facebook and Twitter and Amazon nearby to keep the broadcasters honest in their rights deals. I mean, it's still it's like we're halfway there. We don't know where the end game is, but Facebook especially is trying to say, well, we need to make sure we're keeping the attention of customers.
Totally.
And they've started to realise that sports is a premium content piece.
Yep.
Is that starting to shape the discussions around sports rights deals and stuff?
Yeah, it is. Look, and the Premier League has done deals with Facebook into Asia.
Yep.
Right. Amazon's doing deals all over the world. The IPL is a big client of ours. Star Asia just did a massive deal, paid 5 times the amount for the rights that they did a few years ago because Amazon and Facebook were in the mix there. And I think the interesting thing about, say, Facebook and Amazon, their models, right? You think about Amazon, the way they make money, typically, it's through retail and selling stuff and subscriptions and all those sorts of things. By attracting a new audience through offering them content, right, they can monetize that in so many different ways. Now, Facebook is also moving that way with Facebook Exchange and other things as well. So, whereas if you're a broadcaster, you sort of make money typically by selling ads.
Yeah.
They're moving into digital and social as well. So the Facebooks, the Amazons are really disrupting the industry, and it's going to be really interesting to see how that pans out. And if you're a Premier League or an NFL or an NBA, in the future, you could potentially see a world where you do one deal. Yeah. And that deal is with Amazon.
Yeah.
All over the world. Now, there's complexities in terms of territories and
but they can then do the rights.
Exactly.
They can sell it back to the Channel 7s or the CBSs or Sky ongoing, and it just gives them the leverage. And we've seen, I guess, the rights, especially in Australia with the tennis and cricket, changing over, and also that it's moving from just TV. It's like TV and digital and social and catch up, and seeing where the providers want to be. But it definitely is where, where the end game is for Facebook, whether it is we're going to put this content on to make our OTT product work, or we're going to move to a subscription model, or is it just more people on our platform powers our ad business, and that's where it goes? Because you've got that sort of play of, yes, we'll sell our rights, which a lot of leagues do, and it's a preferred model, sell it to a broadcaster and get a big bag of cash. But then you've got what MLB and WWE are doing, where they're just owning their own ecosystem, and killing it in that space. And so it's interesting to see how that's going to work in different markets, but also in the global play, which is I think where more and more sports are now starting to play, especially US outside the US and European. Like, do you think that's where OTT's going to best fit? Like, we've got some really good products in that space now. They're doing well globally, but do you think that's going to then bubble down to to team level, to athletes, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely, because you have direct access to an audience by doing that, and it's all becoming vertical channels or horizontal channels, whatever you want to call them, but the ability to actually connect with an audience directly and monetize that is incredibly powerful. And I often use just a simple example of a girl in Adelaide.
Yep.
I think Kayla, it's Signs. I think her name is.
No, she's a Perth girl. YouTube and Instagram. Yeah. Kayla Ritzine, she's phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sort of walking around New York City and I saw big billboards of her coming to town and doing these events. And she's built her profile and obviously monetized that through Instagram. And a girl living in Adelaide or Perth, wherever she lives, right? It's the ability of someone like that to do that alone or with a little bit of help.
Yep.
So the opportunity for athletes and for teams and leagues is phenomenal in that space. And again, the thing, sport has really compelling content. Everyone wants access to it.
Yeah.
Because it really engages an audience. So as a rights holder, you have an opportunity to actually leverage that, have lots of conversations. There isn't an answer at the moment, but you can have lots of conversation with people that want your content. And again, the Australian marketplace and Australian leagues and teams want to come over here and learn. So Birchie at the AFL comes over all the time to understand what's going on so he can take that back to Australia, learn from it, and offer the best possible service to AFL fans that delivers a return to the AFL and the teams.
But you've also got, looking at LeBron's been in LA for all of 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And, he's already had his media company Undisputed, but he's gone and signed a deal with HBO. Like he's his own media company in his own right. And like 10 years ago, there would have been this pushback to lock down the players, lock down all their rights, don't let them do. And there's still some leagues that do that.
Yep.
Whereas you've got the NBA letting these players become these megastars, and it's only making
That's exactly
the NBA
right.
more popular.
Yep.
And sort of making it potentially the premier destination for athletes.
Yeah. So, and this has happened recently, right? So MLB through BAM has obviously built a great business over the years, which they sold. Was it ESPN recently?
Disney bought it.
Disney, that's exactly right.
Yeah, and talk about like because it started as a baseball product. It started inside baseball, and then obviously the players get a share of all baseball revenues, and they moved it out to BAM, and so all the owners got a piece of it, and then they've sold it to Disney. It's been
incredible,
remarkable, and that's over the last 5 years.
Yeah, totally. And look, actually, Birchie and I sat down with him 2 or 3 years ago here, again on a learning mission for the AFL, and I think part of the philosophy then was all these social media companies are sort of ripping us off as an industry, right? Because they're taking all that content, they're not paying us anything.
Well, early on they were saying, hey, we've got great platforms, come talk to your fans. And I was in there, I was saying, hey, all the fans are on Facebook, they're all on Twitter. Yes, give them the content, but that flip didn't like, and it's like, hang on, we don't give our content to free to NBC or Channel 7 or Sky. Hang on, what's going on here? And, kudos to Twitter making that sort of pivot and, being one of the first social networks to put their hand out and say, hey, we want to stream, whether it's, Melbourne Cup and that kind of thing, to at least, get the checkbook out, which is sort of force the others to come to the party. Because you're right, like at the moment, and that was one of the things talking a lot of the digital and CRM folk is, as Facebook's made its pivot, it's had its issues with the Cambridge Analytica and said we're moving more to community-based and you're going to see more of your friends and family. And you've gone and built up this asset that's not reaching as many people anymore. There is that pullback for leagues to go, well, do we stay on these platforms or do we build our own and hope that this is where they stay? And that's pretty much the BAM model. Yeah,
exactly. But I also think it was a realization back then that actually giving these social media players access to your content for free is actually a good thing because it drives your fan base, engages them, and actually they come back and watch and consume more of your content anyway. It's just getting the balance right. So pay for the stuff you want them to pay for, but then engage with them and provide them with free content that helps you drive your brand.
I think Adam Silver said it recently about they see social as this snackable media. Drives them back in. And even the early IPL YouTube stuff, when it was, back in the day when, oh no, we can't put it on YouTube, people won't watch the TV. And all the stats show the people who tuned in and watched it, they eventually want the 4K high definition TV experience.
That's right,
So it drives them back. So it's good to see those kind of theories and myths being debunked.
Yeah.
And the NBA is the best at it, whereas some of the leagues are still playing whack-a-mole with digital rights and saying don't put it over here, don't put it over there. The NBA sort of lets their content breathe a little bit. They're probably a little bit lax with what is allowed, but they know that it comes back to them from a fan point of view.
Totally.
But I think it is one of the things that talking to the team level people is trying to figure out. You talked about before about DMAs and like the law and all the restrictions haven't caught up with what the world is.
Yeah.
Talking to Scott Kegley, they've got their own OTT channel and they can geo-block it and all those kind of things, which is great, but it becomes quite cumbersome to say, oh, we want to be able to do it on this, but it's only for this market and everyone outside the US. So it's that sort of legal... the lawyers are the last ones to catch up.
And look, something I've been in the US 4 years now, and some of the things, it's an amazing place, right? Yep. There's some of the things still amaze me how, I wouldn't say backward, but in Australia's ahead in many respects. So think about betting and wagering, right? Different markets, different reasons, but we've, as a country and as a sports industry, got a lot to offer the US around sports betting and wagering, right? So we lead the world in that area, in my opinion. But the way that's being rolled out in terms of regulations state by state, no federal overall rule, it's very complex here.
Yeah.
It's not going to be as straightforward as everyone thinks. But again, big opportunity, and we've paved the way in Australia, and there's lots for them, the US market, to learn from us.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. I've been talking to a bunch of people because it's not just the gambling operators are going to do well. Like there's all these different, there's a big sponsorship vertical that's going to be available, and any time any of my US friends come to Australia and I show them my Facebook feed and there'll be a player with a gambling operator on their jumper or talking about it and it blows their mind. And then, you walk into the MCG and there's a TAB and you can put a bet on the first goal, which is the same thing that happens in the UK. It's already there. So there's the sponsorship piece that's going to be available. There's a bigger integrity piece that the sports will want to look over and make sure of that's going to be a big part. But then the whole thing is the acquisition. There's a lot of people in the US that gamble, but they don't gamble with a legal operator that's in market. And so we all know that the acquisition sponsorship play is what all the partners do in Australia. Yeah. But we're doing it with a really saturated market. Like everyone's already got one or two, maybe three accounts.
That's right.
It's really hard to go and get new ones, but it's practically greenfield over here.
Yeah, it is.
And so that's going to be the big opportunity. And it's going to be interesting to see which leagues are going to be the first movers and sort of either do partnerships or set up their own shops and follow some of the models that have happened in Australia and the UK and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think there will be a brain drain of Australians that have had experience in the space.
Look, if ever there's a time for an Australian sports executive to come over here and help the industry, it's now. Yeah. Because we, again, as I said, we've got lots to teach the US market over here from the experience we've had.
Yeah, and also in the tech solutions as well, whether it be geolocation and the app knowing where you are and where you're going to get a bet, when you can put a bet on, and those kind of things. That because everyone's trying to finally slice the market that's happening in Australia, apply those same technologies over here, and there's a really big opportunity.
Correct.
The other big opportunity is the Asian market, and how everyone's sort of again trying to figure it out. One of the big discussion points of one of the sessions at SEAT was, I guess, catering to the Chinese market and what's worked and what hasn't. Whether it's dedicated staff and dedicated campaigns, and trying to understand the language and even the nicknames that the Chinese use for some of them that aren't suitable for podcasts, because I don't want to put explicit. But Google what Steph Curry's Chinese nickname is, and you'll understand why. What does the Chinese market represent to the global sports market?
So, look, huge market opportunity. Government is spending an enormous amount in sport, wants to transform the industry there, but be a global player in that. So you see that from the investment in actually the leagues themselves, so the Chinese Super League in football, but also from the major brands that are doing big deals at a FIFA and IOC level, spending an enormous amount of money. So the government is behind it, building the infrastructure and the industry. From a sports perspective, to the NBA is, have been the most successful. They went out to China many, many years ago, and it's the number one sport. A lot to learn from the way they approached it.
And obviously, being help them lead them into that market.
Very much a player-based strategy as well. Done very well with that. But the NBA is a very smart organisation, great marketing organisation, and they had a combination of a sort of local team with US, experienced leaders actually leading that team. A guy by the name of Mark Fisher, who played a major role in building that franchise out there. But look, I was there a month or so ago, and I met with all the major leagues there. We've all got offices. Yep. They're all trying to capture that Chinese consumer, find the right balance between remaining a sort of US-focused league and having a US positioning, but also trying to actually tailor that proposition for Chinese fans. And the beauty of social media, as we talked about before, is you can directly engage with them now and provide them with content that is unique to that market. But look, I would say almost every conversation we have with a global sport, whether you're a team or a league or with a global brand, China is a major focus.
Yeah, and that's where technology like the guys at WSC, to be able to be cutting the videos and the highlights and everything that's happening in the NBA and then customising it for that market is critical, because, they can be setting up the rules that go, everyone they love LeBron more than someone else, or they're really following this player. Yep. Let's make sure that they're seeing more of that. And so as that type of tech that's automated, machine learning, give you the right stats that you don't have to have more bodies cutting it up and putting it out. Yeah, I think that's going to be real important. I want to wrap up with the closing five. Do you remember the first sports event you ever attended?
It would have to be a Melbourne Footy Club game at the MCG, I reckon.
So you were a Melbourne supporter growing up?
Family was mad Melbourne supporters, so I remember days when I used to go watch the footy, late 70s and the 80s. We were pretty ordinary.
Yeah,
as it seems. So, Robbie Flower was about it that we had. But, the MCG, dear to my heart.
Very much so, very much so. Favourite, you would have been at a fair few sports events. Do you have a favourite food memory or a go-to food at a sports event?
You cannot beat a 4 and 20 pie. And the longer I've been away, the more I crave one. And they've just done a deal with the
Philadelphia 76ers.
My brother lives in Philly.
Yeah.
So, obviously Brett Brown is the coach as well there. I'll be heading down to Philly this year to eat a few meat pies.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to going to a 76ers game and just with the experience of having a meat pie at an NBA game.
I'll tell you what, one other experience which is great is a hot dog at the Yankees game.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So, but give me a meat pie anytime.
Yeah, and a pro tip for Darren Ravel, who copped it from everyone in Australia when he had his meat pie with a knife and fork. It's just put the sauce on top and just eat it in your hands, Darren. What's the first app you open in the morning?
You know what? I'd say Washington Post.
Yeah.
Being here in America with what's going on with politics in the world, it's incredible, crazy times, and I'm absolutely obsessed by it.
Yep.
So, and there is guaranteed there is always a story. You wake up in the morning, oh my God, what's happened?
Yeah.
Now, so
which is a bit unfortunate.
Yeah,
yes. But it is the world we're living in at the minute. Is there someone that you would suggest that the listeners should follow, that you follow, and why?
Yeah, look, I think, I listen to podcasts, New York Times. I hope that doesn't make me too liberal, because everyone's sort of, you put in a bracket here, you're labelled. You're either a conservative or a liberal. Well, hang on a minute. I like to listen to a whole host of different things, but I like listening to the New York Times podcast because it just breaks down a lot of these issues. They go into further detail. So, look, and probably the second app that I wake up to every morning is Instagram.
Okay.
So, follow a bunch of celebrities, hedonistic reasons, and also athletes. So LeBron, Lewis Hamilton, Jordan, the Shark.
Yep.
I love watching the Shark work out like he does. He's ripped.
Yeah. No more nude shots, though, Greg. No more nude shots. Yeah. Put the rig away. I do think the New York Times is like, as part of what I try to do in understanding the sports space is also look at different business models and, how the New York Times is, shifted to the subscription and appears to be working, you know, because paywalls overall for a lot of media companies haven't been working. We've seen a lot of consolidation of media, but the way that they're pivoting a little bit from, you know, to subscription, but then also different pieces of content, podcasting being one. I think it's really interesting. I think there's a lot to learn in that, you know, where the media is moving and how it's changing and what sports can learn. So
yeah, for sure.
It's a really good case study of the New York Times.
It is. And I also love staying in touch with what's going on in Melbourne. So I check the Age and the Herald Sun, get a balanced view. Yeah. And obviously the AFL as well.
Terrific. You might have spoiled it, but what social media platform is your MVP?
Yeah, Instagram by a long way.
But, and is it just because it's the one bit of media that you can sort of tune out a little bit and just accept the pictures coming in and sort of catch up with people?
Yeah, you can. I mean, it's great to follow, you know, influencers, whether they're celebrities or media personalities, politicians, whatever. But it's also great to share things with friends and family. You know, I've been away nearly 12 years now, and for me, keeping in touch with friends and family and also showing them my life and what I'm living, I just really, really enjoy that. And it's a great, simple, easy platform to use.
Do you find yourself going to the stories first or flicking through the feed?
That's a very good question. I think I probably go through the stories first now. Yeah.
And where do you see, like, you know, what are we, 4 weeks into Instagram TV, which is sort of Facebook and Instagram's little push into longer form influencer? They're really trying to pull those YouTube influencers and creative content producers who've got to figure out vertical and how to best shoot on it. Yeah. Where do you sort of see that as a space? And
well, I think about it from a sort of consumer. Right. I mean, the first thing you do in the morning, right? Your mobile phone, it's obsessive, right? You're almost addicted to it. You know, last thing at night, first thing in the morning. Not sure how healthy that is for you, but bang, I'm up. Whether it's 5 in the morning or 6 or whatever. And if I'm in Instagram and they're showing something new and different to me, I'm going to check it out. Right. How long I stick there, I'm not quite sure about it, but the ability they have to actually connect with you as a consumer directly is really powerful.
It's going to be interesting to see how they tweak the discovery algorithm and how you find new stuff. Because, you know, they've never brought in anything like, you know, the retweet, which is really helpful, the virality for things from a Twitter point of view. But it's always been sort of pseudo word of mouth, you know, tag people. It's going to be interesting to see where the Instagram TV, how that does go viral or how you do communicate with people and how it, you know, how it does go. At the moment, it's still another platform and content producers like, we've got to put it on that platform. And you can see repurposed content that's being recut or rejigged. You've got some brands that have been doing vertical for a long while and starting to figure it out. But there's a little bit of, you know, what goes on there, what fits better. You know, the whole idea of what's ideal length, which is, you know, a bit of ridiculous. Good content is good content no matter what the length, but what the viewing habits are going to be like on that as a platform as opposed to stories and YouTube. Yeah,
that's right. I think, again, the beauty of those platforms is that it offers you a window into someone's life or experience that you wouldn't normally get, right? So if you're a fan of David Beckham, for example, you know, previously you would have seen him on the field, interviewed, or whatever. Now you have access to his life and what he's doing every day, all right? And that's the beauty. That's why we're so addicted to these things. And you know, there's almost no one out there that you can't have that access to.
And it's going to be interesting to see where those content producers, where they land on that. Like, you know, we had 18 months, 2 years of Vine, and these Vine superstars were doing great 6-second clips because they were the highest, you know, the best at their game at that level. It's going to be interesting to see where that goes. It's not just going to be, I'm a vlogger, so I'm just going to turn my camera around and now I'm on Instagram TV. There will be those content producers that will become, you know, in the same way that, you know, sports now are almost, you know, having someone in a game day producer role that can produce a really good Insta story and make it interesting and not just players are running out, halftime score. Like, make a story of it, make it compelling and make people want to watch it. Being able to do that on Instagram differently for Snapchat. And then what does, you know, the NFL films mini movie look like? And does it have to happen right there and then? Can it come out 2 days later and it's super compelling? Because, you know, game day is so jam-packed at the minute. You know, finding out when and where and how they want to view on that platform is going to be really interesting to see where it develops. And, you know, because it's the new kid on the block, Facebook's going to be pushing it really hard. You know, every other platform when it comes out new, you know, pushing the edges of it and learning it while everyone's still figuring it out. It's the best way to go.
Yeah, I mean, it's an incredibly exciting time to be in the industry, no doubt about it. Like, think back 5-10 years and where we were then and where we are now. It's incredible. Yeah,
well, I joke when I started Sports Geek, you know, people were running digital departments were called, you know, webmasters, and there was one person driving the website, and now, you know, they're in some cases small, you know, media organisations, and they're producing the content that, you know, TV networks were doing 10 years ago.
And I'm going to show my age here, but I remember getting my first text on my mobile phone and go, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
Why are you sending me this?
Yeah.
Couldn't understand it.
And for the people who don't understand that, go Google what a beeper is. I don't know if you ever had a beeper. I had a beeper at one stage. But yeah, that's how old I am. Yeah. So, Glenn, where can people find you, connect with you on the internet? Where's the best way?
Well, on Instagram is probably the best way. Use that. That's my go-to platform. So everyone's welcome to follow me on Instagram.
And your handle?
GA Lovett.
Okay. And you're obviously on LinkedIn and all those.
Yeah, LinkedIn.
All
on Facebook. Easy to find. So,
well, thank you very much for taking the time and showing me downtown financial district of New York.
Appreciate it, mate.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Join sports executives from around the world at sportsgeeknation.com.
Thanks, DJ Joel. Yes, thank you to all the people that I caught up with at Seat Dallas, especially those ones who are Sports Geek Nation members. If you did not get a Sports Geek Nation sticker, a little bit of swag to put on your laptop, please let me know. I'll be more than happy to mail them out to people who have signed up as Sports Geek Nation members. And if you did attend Seat Dallas and you have not yet signed up, please let me know. There is a special offer for people who attended Seat Dallas. Just send me an email. If you're already in the Slack, send me a DM and I will definitely connect you with that offer. Again, thank you very much for the support in real life, for catching up with people. I didn't quite get to getting the full footy photo of the people that were already in there, but it will happen. We will make it happen some point in the future. Thanks again to Glenn Lovett from Nielsen Sports. You can send him a tweet at Glenn Lovett or follow him on Instagram and see what he is sharing. As I said earlier, I've been on the road. It was a fast and furious 6 days. Seat Dallas lived up to its expectation. In the ginormous biodome that is the Gaylord Texan. I'm going to do a full recap with a couple of people who I attended. I know there's a few people lurking on the internet, like Fiona Green, who unfortunately could not make it, and a few others who are watching online. I'm going to do a recap with a few people and get some of their key takeaways. As always, it was some absolute rock star people who did speak. It was great seeing a lot of podcast guests on stage and doing excellent work as always. So I was there I arrived on a Thursday, started catching up with people as they came in on the Friday and Saturday, and then Sunday, Monday, Tuesday it was Seat as it always is, full on, lots of talking, lots of networking, and lots of learning. And so it was a really good location, and really good to catch up with a lot of familiar faces. And then I had to shoot off on Tuesday night to catch the end of Podcast Movement, which was in Philadelphia. So I was only able to catch the last 2 days of Podcast Movement and unfortunately was not able to speak. I was meant to speak on the Monday. I guess I'm again going to go through some takeaways with that as I sort of go through my notes and decompress from the trip. But one of the things I am toying with is this idea of that the guys from Buffer sort of tweaked their podcast over the years, this idea of bonus sort of mini-sodes. So regularly, most Mondays, if I'm not travelling and have some hassles with booking guests and things like that, it's normally an interview-based podcast every Monday. And what they started similar approach, but then they started toying with a second episode, which was more of a mini-sode, sort of answering a question or diving into a particular topic. And a little bit of a shorter form, 5 to 10 minutes. So I'm thinking about doing something like that, whether it's similar to, our Sports Geek that I've done previously, or it's a little bit of a deep dive on on a tool or a review of a tool or something along those lines. At the moment, it's just a kernel of an idea. I like it so far, but I'd love your feedback. What would you like to hear? What's the content that you would like in those potential, bonus mini-sodes? I guess they were calling them. I don't know exactly what I would be calling them. One piece of feedback, definitely from Seat, is that Digital to Dollars was a really big success. It's now, the website for Digital to Dollars is now live. You can go to digitaltodollars.com to check out all the components and learn a little bit more about the process. And it's available in multiple forms. The way that we ran it in Dallas, and thank you very much to Christine for moving it into the bigger room. Otherwise, we would have been the room we were assigned would have been heaving. But I think we had about 300 sports execs from the digital and from the CRM space in the room, and went over 50 minutes. And the AV guys were absolutely terrific to set up a shot clock to go through the 5 components for every 10 minutes. And Jose with the sound effects kept everyone on their feet. I'm going to collect some videos and put it up on the Sports Geek Facebook page to give you a bit of a feel for that. But that was pretty much a 2-day workshop run in 50 minutes. So it was very much breakneck speed, but it was great energy in the room, trying to help them understand the Digital to Dollars process, about knowing your audience, not just all your fans, not just saying all Cowboys fans or all Predators fans or all Timbers fans, but going into different segments, how are different segments engaged differently, and then tackling different content pieces. And one of the good things was having a lot of people talk about their best piece of content, what they'd done and what had worked for them. And so there was a lot of sparks flying around in the room, and a lot of energy in the room when people were talking about what they were doing. And then some really big ideas came out when people started saying, what would you do without a budget? If budget was not a problem, what will you do? And some of those big ideas become things that you really want to tackle, and just seeing budget as an obstacle. So there's some really good ideas in the content section. Thank you very much to my coaches, Jesper, Jane, and Zach, who helped out. Then there was a lot of conversation around the distribution, around which social platforms fit, how they're going to tackle. A bit of conversation around Instagram TV. Then the valuation piece was the piece that is pretty much the reason for the book, in that a lot of teams and rights holders aren't quite understanding, and they're grappling with that valuation piece, which was obviously a big discussion point with my interview with Glenn. It's a matter of coming up with your method and starting to say, this is what we value it at, but then also understanding why you're putting that valuation on it. Once you understand the why, and once your commercial team understands the why, it's much easier to sell, which leads into the pitch component of pulling all the pieces together, understanding what your value is, understanding what the sponsor wants, and trying to match those two. I really do think it's a process that works no matter what valuation method you use, whether it's a homegrown one, whether it's one that we apply, whether it's one that you can take on board from someone like Glenn at Nielsen Sports. Once you've got that basis of this is what our valuation is, you still need to be able to integrate it into your pitch and make it work with all the other components that your businesses, that the commercial team are selling. If it's just by itself, then it really is very easy to dismiss. So it was great to do that as a workshop. Ideally, that workshop, I guess its shortest form would probably be 2 hours. So it was real action packed, and we really only scratched the surface in the 50 minutes. But some really good conversations came out of it. I'll be doing a keynote version of that in Melbourne for the Sports Analytics Conference on August 10. If you haven't got your tickets, grab them. It's a really good meetup of a lot of people in Melbourne, and a lot of people come down from Sydney. If you haven't got a ticket, SportsGeek20 is the code. You can get 20% off your ticket if you haven't already done so. I would love to see you there on August 10. I'll be arriving back in Melbourne the day before, so all things, fingers crossed with the travel gods, I will be back and ready to go. And you'll see that you'll see Digital Dollars in a keynote form. Lastly, as I said, Sports Geek Nation is definitely live. It is now we're getting new sign-ups all the time. I'm very happy with both the feedback from people at SEAT when I was talking to them about where they'd like it to go, and also toying around with different types of content, especially in the sports, in the Slack community, in whether it be sometimes facilitated, doing some monthly challenges, those kind of things, and also making sure that those connections and those conversations that happen at conferences like SEAT can happen year round, and be both cross different verticals, whether it be digital and data and technology, which is what happens at SEAT, but then also inside those verticals, lots of people talking about digital or specifically social. So that's pretty much it from me. If you have not signed up for Sports Geek Nation, please do so. Go to sportsgeeknation.com to check it out, what the offer is. You can join the Facebook group by going to sportsgeeknation.com/Facebook group. And that's pretty much it from me. I will do a bit of a longer recap when I'm got all my thoughts together, and when I've, I guess, written down a few things and caught up with a few other people. I'm actually going to get some people on to sort of talk about their main takeaways. As I'm recording this intro, I've got about 4 or 5 more interviews happening here in New York, so you'll get some good insights from people who were at SEAT, and some people that weren't, that I was lucky enough to catch up with while I'm in New York, like Glenn. So until next episode, my name is Sean Callanan, and you've been listening to Sports Geek.
Join Sports Geek Nation access to exclusive Slack and Facebook groups with regular Q&A sessions with Sean Callanan. Go to sportsgeeknation.com to join. Need help with your digital rate card? Not sure how to price your assets? Is there a disconnect between digital and commercial? That is where Sean works best, in digital divorce counselor mode. Book a time for a call with Sean to discuss the Sports Geek process. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/phone call.
Go to sportsgeekhq.com for more sports digital marketing resources.